As I stepped out onto my porch today, I was pleased to see that my hard work had paid off. A pleasant little row of greenery had unveiled itself overnight, eager to meet the sun. My mailbox had been tampered with. Protruding from its orifice was a letter. "Hello there, just got back from a fishing trip. You should come down to the beach sometime. I've got something for you. Willie." Now, something about this passage didn't sit quite right with me. It had an ominous stench attached to it. If I were to write to a stranger about a meeting, I'd at least give them peace of mind by introducing myself in a more informative or descriptive manner. I was really hoping that Willie was indeed his name and not what he had for me. So after watering my crops and toying with the idea of attending the rendezvous, I made the choice to meet Willie. Tee-hee. En route to the beach, in the town square, I saw a guy near the bar and thought it would be nice to introduce myself. I was wrong. I don't know what was up his arse, but he seemed like a dick. After giving him a death stare, I carried on my merry way. As I walked onto the pier, there seemed to be a hobo smoking something at the end of it. As I approached him, unsure of what to say, he was the first to initiate the conversation. "Ahoy there, son! I heard there was a newcomer in town. Good to finally meet you." It was Willie. He proceeded to tell me that he'd returned from a month's fishing trip out at sea, and had yielded a big haul, which he then blew the profit made on a new rod. I was waiting for him to get to the point, and he did. He wanted to give me his old rod. I'm sure there's an innuendo there. He said it's important to him that the art of fishing is kept alive, and hoped I'd maybe buy something from his store sometime. He also said he'd buy anything that I caught. Maybe I shouldn't have judged him so harshly, although, with oddballs like Mayor Lewis around, I had every right to. I was eager to try out my new rod, and it turned out I was pretty damn good at this whole fishing malarkey. I caught myself 2 herrings and a sardine. Willie was about to kick himself for giving me that rod, as I made a tidy profit of 160 gold pieces from it. I left Willie's shop and had a nose around the beach. There I stumbled across a clam, an old shack and a broken bridge. Maybe I could come back and repair it sometime. The shack appeared to be locked, so I carried on further up the beach, and a strange statue of sorts caught my eye. I couldn't make any sense of it, so I picked up an oyster and headed for home. That's when I saw a man leave the shack. Elliot was his name. Looked like he'd been ripped straight out of a Disney movie. Before he could break into dance and song, I made a break for it, and carried on towards town. I stopped and took a gander at the graveyard. Adjacent to one generic gravestone belonging to Mona, there was another, only this one had what might as well have been gibberish scribbled all over it. I popped into the general store to take a peek at my precious bag once more, only to bump into Lewis, who told me he shops there regularly. Cool story, bro. Having no interest in conversing further with him, I spoke to Abigail, the local goth chick. She said nothing other than acknowledging my existence, whilst probably pitying her own. So I spent my fishing earnings on a few potato seeds, then made haste for Fu Farm. After planting my new seed recruits, I thought it wise to gather some wood and clear more overgrowth, obtaining a couple of seeds in the process. I then dumped the oyster, clam and sap I collected into the cell box and decided to call it a night. Today I awoke to the sound of rain hitting the window. I turned on the TV and switched to the weather channel to discover that tomorrow's was going to be cloudy, but dry at least. The weather wasn't going to put a downer on my day, however. Today was the day the construction of my new fence began, or what I like to call the Lewis defence strategy. So I grabbed my collection of wood from the chest and began creating the pieces I would need. Post by post the fence took shape, and I was finished in no time. Proud of my accomplishment, and with hours to spare, I visited the town to gather some supplies. Once again I peered at the notice board, rolling my eyes to see Lewis's birthday was nearing. But this time there was a note, left by the goth chick. She promised a gold reward in exchange for a quartz crystal. I didn't want to aid or play any part in her blood rituals, so I dismissed it as quickly as I had seen it. I pushed on the door of Pierre's shop, ignorant of the sign dangling near my face which read, "Closed on Wednesday." So it was pissing it down and I didn't get to glimpse at my red bag. Higher beings were laughing at my expense that day. I attempted to enter the saloon instead, which didn't open until 12, so I had to wait. It was then I caught Lewis watching me from behind a bush, who, once caught, tried to make it look as though he was simply walking by. I genuinely feared for my safety then, but at least the fence was up, not that it was going to stop him. So I aimed the opposite direction to where he was going, east, seeing as I hadn't been there yet, and entered the town's archaeological office. Behind the front desk resided a man named Gunther, who looked more like he belonged in the saloon, but who was I to judge? He was embarrassed to inform me that the previous curator had taken the entire display with them, and then asked me to notify him if I were to stumble across any artifacts or minerals, to which I agreed. The moment the clock struck 12, I entered the saloon, which was deserted, amplifying the sounds of the approaching barman's footsteps. Gus was his name, and although he was being pleasant, he was beating around the bush when it came to selling me any of the hard stuff. So I hit the arcade instead. Approaching one of the machines, a skull-shaped keyhole drew my gaze. I took note of it and played on the other machine. The game sucked. I mean, who plays 8 and 16-bit games in this day and age? After an hour, I'd had enough. Everybody had the right idea by staying in their homes, and mine was calling to me. When I returned, I saw the small pond near my crops and tried my luck at fishing. Sadly, the fish in my pond weren't exactly, let's say, fish. So I went foraging for seeds. This was when I discovered the pond's big brother at the southern end of my farm. Don't blame me for not seeing it. I battled floral minions just to make it there. Unfortunately, it was guarded by a plethora of rocks, so gaining access wasn't going to be easy, although probably necessary as there was a southern entrance. North of my farm, I found a ruined building, a cave, and another entrance. The cave would come in handy for storage of sorts, but now I'd have to build another couple of anti-Lewis fences. By 5 o'clock, I was soaked to the bone and had enough, so I lit the fire and retired once more to my bed.